I'm Mike Pickett. I'm on an integrity trip to improve myself and others. I've talked about today's stuff in a previous integrity trip post, but as things continue to develop toward more control by central bankers, I see a need to say it again in greater depth. A growing awareness of the precarious condition of the money system has caused an uneasiness among citizens everywhere in the world. As they deal with inflation that reduces the value of their money, ordinary citizens have become victims of broken financial systems that are based on debt and credit. Common people have not paid a lot of attention to what the money changers have been up to for lack of the capacity to do anything about it. In an attempt to take care of their own needs and to prepare for retirement, they've bought into the options and offers made by bankers and brokers for lack of an alternative. The central control by bankers and oligarchs began in the United States with the passing of the Federal Reserve Act in 1913.
In 1913, the richest people in the United States and probably the world secretly met at Jekyll Island, Georgia, and devised the Federal Reserve Act. The U.S. presidential election was manipulated by diluting votes to a third party, and Woodrow Wilson was elected. He signed the act into law and then declared that control of the nation was in the hands of a few rich oligarchs and there was nothing Americans could do about it. Suffering from the Depression of 1929 to 1935, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made a new deal to borrow from the oligarchs to save the nation's economy in exchange for an income tax on the citizens to pay the debt.
There was no income tax withholding in the U.S. before 1935.
The beginning of constitutional rights being sold for money. The system of credit was established and debt became the new norm.
After World War II, the nation became pacified in their comfortable economy and constitutional rights were ignored.
In 1971, Nixon removed gold as the backing for the U.S. dollar, making U.S. money backed only by a printing press that was controlled by the oligarchs. The people were becoming oppressed by IRS collection practices. The Constitution was pulled back to the front by bold and free-thinking citizens. Today, the national debt is a joke. There is no way for it to be paid by taxing the citizens. Only the Constitution of the United States stands in the way of a new world order controlled by the G7, world oligarchs, and the World Bank. We must pay the price to save it. What can ordinary citizens do about it?
What is known and used as the Keynesian economic system was popularized among the central bankers by the Roosevelt administration in order to restore the problems of the Great Depression. A new deal was made by giving central bankers the power to control and manipulate the U.S. economy by the creation of debt instruments. Local banks have been using a fractional reserve banking scheme that creates money out of nothing more than the creation of a loan and a note representing the loan. The notes that have been created out of nothing were entered on the bank balance sheets as customer deposits, thereby creating for the banks the illusion of solvency. The trading of these notes got completely out of hand by 2008 by the sale of high-risk mortgage notes called derivatives. Such a Ponzi scheme was destined to come to a tragic end the same way that all Ponzi schemes fail for lack of foundation and the integrity to support them. The economy was destined to crash, and by 2008 it happened. After the financial smashing into the inevitable wall in 2008, there was a significant movement in protest to the money changers by citizens that were being robbed by such unscrupulous investment tactics. They called it Occupy Wall Street. People converged on the financial district of New York City in great numbers. The movement has been labeled as left-wing, but I think the label is misleading. The ones on the left were not the only people who were offended by the financial mess created by greed and the unchecked wild trading of debt instruments that had plunged the United States and the entire world into a critical frenzy. Dollars and other currencies at their founding were commonly based on debt and created out of nothing. Now, the 2,000-year-old banking habit of fractional reserve lending is coming more to light as people everywhere are struggling with how to care for themselves and their families when inflation is rising and their money is becoming less valuable at an accelerated rate. When Occupy Wall Street occurred, there was no way that could be seen for an alternative to the current money system. The only way that was seen by citizens in 2008 was to force Wall Street to repent, to change their unscrupulous ways and fix the system that they had created. It didn't work, of course. They didn't change. Greed and competition prevented such a radical flip in behavior. It was an old habit. The banks were injected with enormous amounts of money that was arbitrarily created out of nothing by central bankers by simple debt instruments in the form of bonds to create an arbitrary entry on their balance sheets. This time, a Roosevelt-style New Deal was not needed. The system was already in place to do it. Countless banks were injected with fiat funds in hopes that they would lend more to individuals and small businesses to re-energize the economy. They didn't do it. Instead, they sat on the funds. The taxpayers would be on the hook in the future to pay for their mistakes. Out of desperation, the public are awakening in droves once again to the looming inevitable repeat of previous crashes that is coming in view of the fact that the Wall Street bankers have not changed their methods in the least. Inflation of the money supply looks more appealing to them, especially when it was soon realized that bankers were not being punished for their unscrupulous trading activities, but instead were being rewarded by a Federal Reserve System that was paying off their mistakes with no questions asked. It became a race to see who could accumulate the most of this fiat money, a race to see who would be in the front of this runaway train when it finally hits the wall. I guess the winners will be the ones who turn into a pink mist before anyone else does. It makes no sense at all when you think about it. But wait, the times have changed. An alternative to this phony system was and is in the offing by the creation of the Internet and the World Wide Web. Suddenly, in 2009, there was this anonymous person calling himself Satoshi Nakamoto. Seeing that such a broken system of debt could not be flipped, he discovered and prescribed an alternative referred to by Quoth the Raven in a recent article on Bitcoin Magazine as an exit ramp. Suddenly there was a way to remove oneself from the hands of a greedy Keynesian system, a system of borrowing to create money from thin air, to a new way to be removed from the Wall Street bankers and manage things on their own as individuals. Another more magnified melting of the paper debt seen in 2008 was looming in 2024. Now, people were more awake. They could see through the money schemes that they saw in 2008. The phony paper was about to catch fire again, this time into a huge worldwide bonfire, the likes of which has never been seen in the history of mankind. When the crash hits again this time, thanks to Satoshi Nakamoto and a loving God that is not apt to let his plan of freedom for individuals be blown up by a handful of control freaks that would prefer to let the present system fall and replace it with a central bank digital currency, a money management system that would give the bankers control of the movements of every individual in the world there is an alternative. It's called Bitcoin. It's an individual choice, but it is a heretofore non-existent exit ramp, a peaceful, non-violent alternative to a broken financial system and a broken fiat currency that naturally inflates away to nothing in time. Get on the winning ship. The numbers are growing. This time people don't have to march on Wall Street in protest to the ones who created this system of slavery. All they have to do is exit the system, and they'll leave it in droves when the crash occurs again. And it's coming. Many people are asleep now, but they'll awaken in torrents when it happens again. This time, there's a non-violent, non-confrontational alternative to fighting with those or arguing with those who created this mess. It's an alternative that is available now and is also waiting just beyond the door of chaos that is looming on the near horizon over the heads of all the people in the world. The longer the people wait, the more it'll cost them. But from now on, it'll always be available because there's a limit to the amount of Bitcoin of 21 million. There will never be any more. That makes it deflationary. An epiphany happens gradually and then suddenly. If you haven't had yours by now on Bitcoin, you certainly will when things fall apart again, this time with a complete change. You'll change with it, either by choice or by force. The longer you wait, the more it'll cost you. The question for you is whether to stand on the side of individual choice and responsibility, or if you'd rather be a slave to a group of greedy narcissists who care little about your welfare and your freedom. I'm not a financial advisor, but my well-informed advice is for you to choose now to take the exit. Repent on your own and stop trying to force others to repent. Stay on the side of the God that created you. Knowledge dispels fear. The more you learn, the stronger you become. Be a free and responsible citizen. Exercise your right to choose for yourself while you still can, and while your future should look a lot brighter for you. I encourage you to subscribe to consumersbitcoin.com and join us in our discussion of these matters, and to find strength and confidence to deal with the immediate future. I'm Mike Pickett. I'll see you again soon. In the meantime, stay righteous and sleep well tonight, knowing that your savings are in your own custody.